He brought her. The room did not go still. It was a bar on a Friday night, and bars on Friday nights did not go still for anything. But Zara Cole went still, which was enough. She was holding a tray with 4 drinks on it, and she was standing 3 feet from the service station, and she was looking at the door, and at the man coming through it, and at the woman beside him. And the tray was level, because she had been carrying trays for 4 years, and her hands knew how to hold things, even when the rest of her forgot. He actually brought her. Zara Cole, who had been tending bar at Elliot's for 3 years, and had been doing so with consistent professionalism until this exact moment. He had just seen her ex-boyfriend walk through the door with the woman he had said did not exist when Zara had asked about her 6 weeks ago. "That's just rude," said Marco from the kitchen pass, who had heard her and was not wrong. She could leave. She could hand the tray to someone else and go to the back and wait out the shift in the storage room, and that was a valid option. She looked at Dev, who was scanning the room the way he always scanned rooms, cataloging occupants and exit routes and the social geography of a space, and she looked at the woman beside him, who was wearing the kind of dress that required a decision, and she thought, no. She turned to the nearest person and kissed him. It lasted approximately 4 seconds. She was aware of several things in those 4 seconds: that the nearest person was considerably taller than Dev, that he smelled of cedar and something cold, that his hands came up and did not push her away, but also did not pull her closer, that he was very still in a way that was not the stillness of shock, but the stillness of someone who had made a rapid assessment and arrived at a position, and that the position was stay. She stepped back. She looked up. He had dark eyes and a face that was, she would think later, the kind of face you noticed not because of any single feature, but because of the quality of attention it conveyed, the specific directedness of it, as if everything he looked at received the full weight of being looked at. He was looking at her now with that attention, and she stood in it and thought, I've just kissed a stranger in a bar, and the stranger is looking at me and I should say something. Sorry, she said. That was extremely rude of me. He looked at her for a moment. He did not say, what was that for? He did not say, who are you? He said, is it working? She turned to look at Dev. Dev was not looking at her. Dev was looking at the stranger, and the expression on Dev's face was not the expression of a man watching his ex-girlfriend kiss someone at a bar. It was the expression of a man who had just seen something he was not expecting and was very quickly deciding what to do about it. The woman beside him was looking at Zara with the polite incomprehension of someone who did not have the context. I'm not sure, Zara said. He's not looking at me. The stranger was quiet for a moment. He looked at Dev. He looked at Zara. Then he picked up the drink he had been holding, which she had not noticed until now, and he drank from it and set it back on the bar. Go do your job, he said. You're about to spill those. She looked at the tray. She was, in fact, about to spill those. She had tilted it approximately 3 degrees during the 4 seconds of the kiss, and the glasses were at the edge of safe. She leveled it and went to deliver the drinks, and she did not look back at the stranger, and she did not look at Dev. She was at the far end of the bar delivering the 4th drink when she heard it. She heard it not as individual words but as a wave, the specific vocal texture of a room that has just processed something. The murmur that went through crowds when they were all thinking the same thing at the same time. She heard someone near the window say, is that? And someone else say, I think it is. And a third person say, in a voice that was trying to be quiet and was not quite, that's Matteo Varro. She looked at the bar where the stranger had been standing. He was still there. He had turned slightly, not away from her direction, but sideways, and he was looking at something across the room. And she followed his gaze and found that he was not looking at her and was not looking at Dev, but was looking at the man standing behind Dev. A man in a blue jacket she had not paid attention to. who was now looking at the stranger with an expression that was, she thought, recalibrating. The crowd sounds continued. She heard Varro a second time. She heard someone say the Varro family. She heard someone say something she could not make out, but that made the person next to them laugh, and then stop laughing. She went back behind the bar. Marco was there, and he looked at her and he said, "Do you know who that is?" "No," she said. "That's Matteo Varro." Marco said, "The Varros, the family." He said family in the specific way that meant he was not talking about a family. She looked at the man at the bar, who was now looking at his drink with the specific patience of someone who had been looked at and was waiting for the looking to subside. He was still there. He had not left. He had not done anything about the crowd sounds. He was simply waiting with the drink in front of him. She looked at Dev. Dev had moved. He was closer to the bar now and closer to the stranger and closer to her. And he was talking to the woman beside him in a low voice, and the woman was nodding. And Dev was looking at the stranger with the expression she had noted before, which was not jealousy, but recognition. She thought Dev knew who this man was before I kissed him. She thought Dev knew who this man was, and that expression on his face when the kiss happened was not about me. She thought I kissed a man in a bar to make my ex jealous, and my ex already knew who the man was and his reaction was not jealousy. She put this in the part of her mind she used for things she needed to think about later, and she picked up the next order, and she made 4 drinks with the efficiency of someone who had been making drinks for 4 years, and she did not look at anyone. At 11:45, the bar thinned. Dev had left at 10:30, without speaking to her, without looking at her again after the initial recognition. The woman in the dress had left with him. The man in the blue jacket had left at 11. The stranger, Matteo Varro. He had sat at the bar for the duration of the evening and had drunk 3 drinks at a pace that indicated he was not there to drink, and had not, at any point, looked at her in a way that invited conversation, and had left at 11:30 with the specific unhurried quality of a man who had finished what he came to do. She cleaned the bar. She counted the register. She put on her coat. Marco, on his way out, paused at the door. "You kissed Matteo Varro," he said. "I kissed a stranger who turned out to be Matteo Varro." She said, "There's a distinction." "Not really," Marco said, and left. She stood in the empty bar and looked at the spot where the stranger had been sitting, and she thought about Dev's face when the kiss happened, which was not jealousy. And she thought about the man in the blue jacket who had been standing behind Dev. And she thought about the specific quality of the stranger's stillness during those 4 seconds, which was not the stillness of shock. And she thought about the way he had looked across the room immediately after, not at her but at Dev and the man behind Dev. She thought I interrupted something. She put her bag over her shoulder. She turned off the bar lights. She went out into the Friday night, and she stood on the pavement, and she thought, that was a very stupid thing to do, and the consequences of it are not the consequences I thought I was making. She went home. She sat at her kitchen table, and she looked at the ceiling, and she thought about Matteo Varro and Dev Callahan and a man in a blue jacket, and 4 seconds of a kiss that had not done what she intended and had done something else instead. And she was not yet sure what that something else was. But she was sure it was something, and she was going to need to find out what. She looked at the ceiling for a long time. Then she went to bed, and she did not sleep, which was its own kind of answer. He came in on a Sunday, not Friday, not Saturday. She had worked both nights with the specific vigilance of someone expecting a consequence, and nothing had happened. No one had come. The bar had been the bar, and her shifts had been her shifts, and she had told herself. This meant she had gotten away with it, and had not entirely believed herself. On Sunday she came in at 4 for the setup shift, and at 4:37 the door opened and Matteo Varro walked in. The bar was empty. It was not open yet. The door had been unlocked because she had come in through it, and had not locked it behind her because she had been carrying a box of lemons and had used her hip, and had not gone back. And she thought about this sequence of events later. How small the decision had been, and how large the opening it created. He looked around the empty bar with the same systematic quality she had observed on Friday. He found her. He came to the bar and sat on a stool and put both hands on the bar in the manner of someone who was making clear they had not come to do anything sudden. She looked at him. "We don't open until 5. "I know," he said. "How did you know I'd be here?" "Your schedule is posted in the staff window," he said. "Zara si. Sunday set up. 4 to close." He paused. The door was unlocked. She absorbed this. "Right," she said. "Lemons." He looked at the box of lemons on the bar, which she had set down when she heard the door. He looked at her. He did not say, "I need to explain something," or "I need to talk to you about Friday," or anything that would have been the natural opening of the conversation she had been anticipating. He said, "How much do you know about Dev Callahan?" She was quiet for a moment. She had expected to be the one doing the asking, and she had prepared for that. Had spent 2 nights organizing her questions in order of priority. And this was not the order she had prepared for. "He was my boyfriend for 14 months, she said. "We broke up 6 weeks ago." "What does he do?" "He's a lawyer." She looked at the lemons. "Corporate law. He works for a firm in the financial district." Matteo was quiet. He was looking at the bar surface between his hands, and she recognized the quality of the quiet, which was the quiet of a person deciding what to confirm and what to withhold, which was a quality she had encountered before in other contexts, and which she did not find reassuring. "Is there something about what he does that I should know?" she said. He looked at her. He had the specific quality of attention she had noted on Friday, and she stood in it the same way she had stood in it then, without adjusting her posture or her expression. She had served a great many people across a great many bars, and she had developed a tolerance for being looked at carefully. "What do you remember about Friday night?" he said. "Before." She thought about before. Dev came in. "He brought a woman. I reacted poorly." She paused. "I turned and kissed the nearest person. That was you." There was a crowd response. Dev's expression was not what I expected. "You looked past me at Dev and the man standing behind him." She looked at him. "That's what I remember before." He was looking at her with the expression that she was becoming able to identify, which was the expression he had when something arrived that revised his assessment. "The man in the blue jacket," he said. "Behind Dev." "Yes." "Did you know him?" "No. I'd never seen him before." He was quiet. He turned his coffee cup, which he had apparently brought with him, 1/4 turn, on the bar. She noted this as a thing he did when he was thinking. "The man in the blue jacket was there for a meeting," he said. "A meeting with me." The meeting was in the bar because it was a context neither of us was formally associated with, which was the point. She looked at him. "And when I kissed you, the meeting was disrupted." "The meeting was disrupted," he said, "and photographs were taken." She thought about the crowd sounds on Friday, the wave of recognition, the phones that had come out. She thought about how quickly the whispering had started. "People recognized you," she said. "People recognized me," he said. "I have a policy. I don't photograph well, which is a preference I maintain deliberately." Friday disrupted that. He looked at the bar. "The photographs exist now. Some of them are already in circulation." She looked at him. She thought about Dev's face, which was not jealousy. She thought about the recognition quality of it, the rapid assessment quality of it. "Dev saw you," she said. "Dev Callahan saw me," Matteo said, "and he knew who I was." She was quiet for a moment. "And what does that mean for the meeting that was disrupted?" He looked at her steadily. "It means the terms of the meeting changed," he said. "Information that was not available before Friday is available now." He paused. "I came to tell you that the situation as it currently stands is manageable, but it would help if you avoided any contact with Dev Callahan for the next few weeks." She looked at him. "You came to ask me to avoid my ex-boyfriend." "I came to explain that the situation requires it, and to ask if that's something you can do." She thought about this. She thought about it the way she thought about things when they arrived unexpectedly, which was by looking at all the sides of it before she decided anything about it. She thought about 14 months of Dev Callahan, who she had loved in the specific way. You loved people who were good with other people, but less good with you when no one was watching. And she thought about 6 weeks of the aftermath of that. And she thought about Friday night, and the decision to kiss the nearest person, and the person having been Matteo Varro, and the situation having been whatever the situation was. "I can do that," she said. "I don't have any particular reason to contact him. If he contacts you, I'll tell him I'm busy." She looked at the box of lemons. "Why are you being this honest with me?" He was quiet for a moment. She had asked the question she had not planned to ask, the one that had arrived before her organized questions could. She held it and waited. "Because you're already in the situation," he said. "Not by choice. You were in the bar on Friday doing your job, and you made a decision that had consequences you didn't have the information to predict. And the consequences are now partly yours to navigate whether you want them to be or not." He looked at her. "It's more efficient to give you the information you need to navigate them than to manage the situation without you." She thought about efficient. She thought about the specific quality of what he had just said, which was not generous, and was not apologetic, and was not romantic, and was accurate. The situation was partly hers to navigate. He was giving her the information to do that. It was efficient. It was also, she thought, more respectful than most people managed when explaining a situation that was their problem and someone else's inconvenience. "All right," she said. "I'll avoid Dev for a few weeks. Is there anything else I should do or not do?" He looked at her. "Don't discuss Friday with anyone you're not certain about." "I've discussed it with Marco, who works here," she said. "He knows your name, and he knows I kissed you. He does not know anything else." He nodded. "Marco Delli," he said. "That's acceptable." She looked at him. "You know who Marco is." "I know who works here," he said. "It's not unusual. I was going to be in the building." She absorbed this. He had known who worked in the bar before he came for his meeting on Friday. He had known her schedule was posted in the staff window. He had come on Sunday at 4:37. "You looked me up," she said. "After Friday?" "Yes." "Before?" He was quiet for a moment. "Your name came up in the context of the meeting," he said. She looked at him. She felt the shape of something shifting, the specific sensation of a picture whose edges you had been trying to find moving into a configuration that was different from what you had been expecting. "Dev mentioned me to someone," she said. He did not answer. Immediately. She noted the pause. The meeting on Friday was with a party who had information about various people in the city. He said, "Your name was part of that information. As context, not as subject." She thought Dev mentioned my name to the man in the blue jacket, who mentioned it to Matteo, in the context of something I don't fully understand yet. She said, "I'm going to need to understand more of this eventually." "Yes," he said, "you are. But not today. Today I needed to tell you to avoid Dev Callahan, and to tell you that the situation is manageable." He picked up the coffee cup and stood. "Both of those things are true." She looked at him across the bar. He was standing and she was standing, and the bar was empty around them, and the afternoon light was coming through the front window in the way it came before the evening crowd arrived, which was a quality of light she had always found good. The light that came when the day was still available, before the night made its demands. "Why did you let me?" she said. He looked at her. Let you what? On Friday. She looked at the bar surface between them. You didn't stop me. He was quiet. No, he said. Why not? He looked at her for a long moment. She looked back, and she did not fill the silence because she had asked the question she wanted answered, and the answer was in the quality of what he did next. What he did was, he looked at the bar surface, and then back at her, and he said, it wasn't the wrong moment to not stop something. She thought about this sentence for the rest of the day. She thought about it while she cut the lemons, and while she set up the bar, and while she served the Sunday evening crowd, and while she cleaned up. After, and she thought about the specific grammar of it, which was the grammar of someone who had chosen their words with precision and had said exactly what they meant, and not one word more. It wasn't the wrong moment to not stop something. She filed it in the part of her mind she used for things that were going to need more time before they resolved, and she finished her shift, and she went home, and this time she did sleep, which was also its own kind of answer. She looked him up on a Tuesday. She had resisted for 2 days on principle, which was the principle that looking someone up on the internet was a form of deciding you needed to know more about them. And she had not yet decided whether she needed to know more about Matteo Varro. And the not deciding had been a way of maintaining some control over a situation in which she did not have much. On Tuesday morning, the control she had felt she was maintaining stopped feeling like control and started feeling like avoidance. And avoidance was something she was worse at than most things. So she made coffee and opened her laptop and looked him up. The internet had relatively little to say about Matteo Varro, and said it with the specific restraint of sources that had more to say and had chosen not to. There were 3 photographs, 2 of them from events 7 or more years ago, in which he appeared at the edge of the frame in the way of someone who had not been the subject of the photograph and had ended up in it anyway, and one from a court document that was 12 years old and showed a younger face with the same quality of attention. There were business registrations for several companies, none of which had websites that contained anything personal. There were 3 news articles. One about a zoning dispute from 5 years ago that mentioned a Varro Holdings as one of the interested parties. One from 9 years ago about a charitable foundation donation that named the Varro family as donors. And one that was 11 years old and that she read 3 times. The 3rd article was about a fire. It was a warehouse fire. Industrial district. 3 in the morning. And the article said that the cause was under investigation and that the building had been owned by a company called Varro Consolidated and that no one had been in the building at the time. The article said the investigation was ongoing. There were no follow-up articles she could find, which was itself a kind of information. She closed the laptop. She made a second coffee. She thought about what she now knew, which was not much that was concrete, and enough that was contextual. She thought about the specific grammar of not much and enough, and how those 2 things together made a picture she could work with, even if she could not see all of it. She thought about her friend Petra, who worked in the building 2 blocks from Elliot's, and who knew everyone in a 6-block radius by name and occupation and approximate net worth. A skill Petra had developed from years of working in commercial real estate and maintaining relationships across the city's professional landscape. She texted Petra, "Are you free for lunch?" Petra was free for lunch. They met at the sandwich place on Durant at 12:30, and Petra looked at her with the expression of someone who had seen the internet already. "You kissed Matteo Varro," Petra said. "The internet has opinions about that," Zara said. "The internet has a photograph," Petra said. "From someone in the bar. You're in profile. He's recognizable. It's been shared approximately 400 times in the circles I operate in." Zara looked at her sandwich. 400 times. Give or take. Petra looked at her. "Are you all right?" I'm trying to understand the situation, Zara said. Tell me what you know. Petra told her. Petra knew a great deal. Assembled from years of operating adjacent to people who knew more than they said. And what she told Zara was the Varro family had been in this city for 3 generations. The family business was not one business, but several, some of them visible and some of them not. The visible ones were in real estate and logistics and a restaurant group. The not visible ones were the not visible ones. Matteo was the current head of the family. He had taken over when his father died 8 years ago. He was known for being methodical and for not making decisions publicly and for settling things in ways that did not generate press coverage. He was not someone that people who crossed him lightly generally crossed twice. And Dev, Zara said. Petra looked at her. What about Dev? Dev was in the bar on Friday. He walked in with his new girlfriend right before I kissed Matteo. She paused. His expression when it happened was not jealousy. It was recognition. Petra was quiet for a moment. She had the expression of someone who was deciding whether to share information she had not been asked for directly. Dev works for Harlow and Crane. She said, It's a law firm. Legitimate. Technically. In practice, they represent a significant number of clients whose businesses are in the not visible category. She looked at her coffee. There's a group called Mercer. You may have heard the name. Zara had not heard the name. She said so. Mercer is a collection of business interests, Petra said. They've been trying to expand their position in this city for some time. The Varros are one of the parties they've been in conflict with. She looked at Zara. Dev Callahan has been doing legal work for Mercer-adjacent clients for at least 2 years. I know this because I processed a property transaction 18 months ago where the beneficiary was a Mercer entity and the counsel of record was Harlow and Crane. Zara sat with this for a moment. She thought about 14 months and a man who had been good with other people and less good with her when no one was watching. And she thought about the woman in the dress and the expression of recognition and the man in the blue jacket and a meeting in a bar. Dev brought me up in the context of a meeting with someone who was meeting with Matteo. She said, Who was the meeting with? I don't know. A man in a blue jacket. Petra thought about this. If Dev knew you worked at Elliot's and he brought up your name in the context of a Mercer-adjacent meeting, it's possible your name was being used as context for Matteo's life. She paused. Matteo has very little visible personal life. If someone was trying to establish that he had one, your name in connection with the bar might have been part of that. Zara looked at the sandwich she had not touched. Dev was helping someone build a picture of Matteo's movements. Possibly, Petra said. I'm speculating from partial information. So, Zara said. But the partial information is starting to make a shape. The shape was Dev had given someone information about where Matteo could be found. The meeting on Friday was not incidental. The man in the blue jacket had known Matteo would be at Elliot's because Dev had helped provide the context that put him there. And then Zara had kissed Matteo in front of a room full of people with phones. She thought about the photographs that were now circulating. She thought about 400 shares in the circles Petra operated in. She thought about Dev's expression, which was not jealousy, which was something colder and more specific than jealousy. The expression of a man watching a development that was useful. She thought Dev is using the photographs. She paid for the sandwiches, which neither of them had eaten much of, and she thanked Petra. And she went back to her apartment, and she sat at the kitchen table, and she thought about the shape of the thing, which was now clear enough to act on. And she thought about Matteo's instruction to avoid Dev Callahan, which she now understood was not primarily about protecting her, and was primarily about protecting a situation that Dev's access to her was complicating. She thought Matteo doesn't know what Dev is using the photographs for. He knows the photographs exist, and he's managing his end. He doesn't know Dev is Dev's end. She thought, I know things that Matteo doesn't know. She picked up her phone. She found the number she had saved after Matteo had left on Sunday. She looked at it. She put the phone down. She picked it up again. She went to find Matteo. She had not been given an address or a location. She had been given nothing except a number and the instruction to avoid Dev. And she thought about that. And she thought about the bar and the meeting that had been in the bar and what Petra had told her. And she thought about where a man who did not photograph well and preferred contexts he was not formally associated with would receive a person who was coming to him with information. She texted the number times, I know something about the photographs. Can we meet? He replied, in 4 minutes times. The building on Alcott, 6th floor. Come now if you can. She went. The building on Alcott was a building she had walked past 100 times and had never entered because it was the kind of building that did not invite entry. The lobby had a desk with a man who looked at her and said Varro, and she said yes, and he put her in an elevator that required a key card and let her out on the 6th floor, which was a floor that was organized as an office but occupied as a workspace, with desks and screens and the specific ambient quiet of a place where work happened and was not performed. Matteo was at a desk near the window. He stood when she came in, and he looked at her the way he looked at her, which was with the full quality of his attention. And she stood in it, and she thought, I am here because I found out something and I came to tell him, not because he asked. I know what Dev is doing with the photographs, she said. He held her gaze. He did not say, how do you know? He said, sit down and tell me. She sat. She told him. She told him about Petra and the law firm and Mercer and the property transaction and the man in the blue jacket and the picture she had assembled from partial information. She told him what she thought it meant, which was that Dev had provided the context that put Matteo at Elliot's and was now using the photographs as leverage in whatever negotiation was ongoing. He listened without interrupting. He turned the pen in his hand once while she was talking, which was the only movement she observed. And when she finished, he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, Your assessment is correct. She looked at him. You already knew. I knew Dev Callahan was connected to Mercer through the firm. He said, I didn't know he had given them the information about Elliot's. He paused. I thought the Friday meeting was scheduled through the man in the blue jacket's channels, not through information about my movements. He used me, she said. He knew I worked there. He gave them information about where I worked, and by implication where I might place you. He held her gaze. Yes. She sat with this for a moment. She thought about 14 months and the specific quality of Dev Callahan when no one was watching. And she thought about the woman in the dress and the expression on Dev's face and the cold, specific usefulness of it. And she thought about what kind of person saw his ex-girlfriend in the bar she worked at and thought, this is information I can use. What do you need from me? She said. He looked at her. Nothing. You've already given me what I needed, which is accurate information about what's happening. I'll handle the rest. She looked at the window behind him, which showed the city in the afternoon, and she thought about handle the rest and what that meant, and she thought about handling, which was a thing she was also capable of. I want to talk to Dev, she said. He was quiet. That's not. You told me to avoid him, she said. I understand why, but I know things about the situation that Dev doesn't know. I know. And I think there's a conversation that I can have with him that would resolve part of this faster than whatever you're planning. She looked at him. I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you what I'm going to do so that you can factor it into whatever you're planning. He held her gaze for a long moment. She held his back. She was aware that she was in a room with a man whose family had been in this city for 3 generations and who handled things in ways that did not generate press coverage. And she was telling him she was going to do something he had not authorized. And she was doing it anyway, because the situation was partly hers and she had not been the one who made it. Partly hers, and she intended to be the one who resolved her part of it. He said, "Tell me what you're going to say to him." She told him. He listened. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "That will work." "I know," she said. She stood. "I'll call you after." He looked at her. "You have my number," he said. "I do," she said. She went to the elevator. She pressed the button. She looked at the desk near the window and the man at it, who was looking at her with the expression she had been cataloging for 5 days, the one she was learning to read, and what she read in it now was something she had not seen there before, which was the specific quality of someone who was revising a category. The elevator came. She got in. She went down. She found Dev at his office on a Wednesday afternoon. She had not called ahead. Calling ahead gave people time to prepare, and she did not want Dev to be prepared. She wanted him to be in the middle of his Wednesday afternoon when she arrived, which he was. His assistant looked at her with mild surprise and said, "Mr. Callahan is in a meeting," and she said, "I'll wait." And she sat in the reception area with its clean lines and its carefully chosen art and its implicit communication that the people who worked here were the kind of people who understood that appearance communicated substance. And she thought about 14 months. She thought about the 14 months. The way she thought about things she needed to understand accurately, which was without the emotional texture that came from being inside them. She thought about a man who was good at appearing, who had been very good at appearing to be in the relationship while conducting another life alongside it. And she thought about the woman in the dress, and she thought about a man in a blue jacket receiving information about her workplace from someone who had eaten dinner at her kitchen table 60 times. And she thought, "I am not here about the relationship. I am here about the information." The assistant came back at 3:40 and said Mr. Callahan could see her now. Dev's office had a view of the city that was designed to communicate the specific thing that views of cities from offices were designed to communicate. Dev himself was at his desk, with the expression of someone who had used the 10 minutes of her waiting to decide what expression to wear. And what he had decided on was the expression of someone who was mildly curious and not particularly concerned, which she recognized as the expression he used when he was concerned and did not want to show it. She sat down across from his desk without being asked. She put her bag on the floor beside the chair, and she folded her hands in her lap, and she looked at him. "I know about the photographs," she said. He held the expression. "What photographs?" "The ones from Elliot's last Friday," she said. "The ones of me and Matteo Varro that are circulating in approximately 400 shares in the professional circles of this city." She looked at him steadily. "I know you gave the man in the blue jacket information about my workplace, and by extension where Matteo Varro could plausibly be found. I know the meeting on Friday was a result of that information, and I know you've been using the photographs from that meeting as leverage in whatever negotiation Harlow and Crane is conducting on behalf of Mercer-adjacent clients." The expression held for approximately 3 more seconds, and then it did what it always did when she surprised him with the full shape of something he thought she only had part of, which was go very still. Dev Callahan was not a man who lost his composure, but he was a man whose composure, when she knew him well enough to read it, became a different quality of composure when the situation changed. "Zara," he said. His voice was moderate, the voice he used when he was choosing each word. "I'm not here to discuss the relationship," she said. "I'm not here to discuss the woman or the breakup or the 14 months. I'm here to discuss Friday." He looked at her. He turned a pen on his desk once. A gesture she recognized from their time together as a gesture of processing, and she noted the familiarity of it and set it aside. "How much do you know?" he said. "Enough," she said. "Enough to have a useful conversation with you, and enough to have a useful conversation with Matteo Varro, which I've already had. He was quiet. You've spoken with Varro. I've spoken with him twice, she said. Once on Sunday, when he came to the bar to explain that the situation required me to avoid you for a few weeks, and once on Tuesday when I went to him with information about what you're doing with the photographs. She looked at the desk between them. He didn't ask me to come to you. I decided to do this separately, in addition to whatever he's planning, because this is partly my situation too, and I get to handle my part of it. Dev looked at her for a long moment. She recognized the quality of the looking, which was Dev reassessing her in the way he occasionally reassessed her when she did something that fell outside the category he had placed her in. He had placed her in a category early in the relationship, and he had kept her there, and she had allowed it, and the relationship had ended partly because of that, and partly because of the woman in the dress. And the relevant thing now was not the category, but the reassessment. "What do you want?" he said. "I want to tell you what I know," she said, "and I want you to understand that I know it. And then I'm going to leave," she said. "I don't want anything from you. I'm not asking for anything. I'm telling you something." He was quiet. He had the expression of a man who was accustomed to conversations in which people wanted things and was uncertain how to receive a conversation in which they did not. She let him be uncertain. It was a relatively new experience for him in conversations with her, and she thought it was probably useful. "Tell me," he said. "I know that you gave Mercer's people information about my workplace," she said. "I know that you knew Matteo Varro had been a patron at Elliot's, and that the information about where I worked made it a plausible meeting location. I know that the photographs from Friday exist because I was in the bar doing my job, and I made a decision without understanding what I was deciding in. And I know that you are using those photographs as leverage in a negotiation that is not my business and not my concern." She paused. "The things I've just said to you are the things I know. You should know that I know them." He looked at her. Because you used information about me without my knowledge to put yourself in a better position in a negotiation that had nothing to do with me," she said. "And the result of that is that I am now in a situation that has a great deal to do with me. And you are the person who put me there." She met his gaze. "I'm not going to do anything with what I know, but I want you to know that I know it. Which means you're aware that if you continue to use the photographs as leverage, I am going to tell Matteo Varro exactly how the photographs came to exist, which is not something he currently knows in full." Dev was quiet for a long time. He turned the pen again. He looked at the desk. He looked at the city through the window. He looked at her. "How did you find out about the firm's connection to Mercer?" he said. "I'm not going to tell you that," she said. "It's not relevant. It's relevant to me. It's not relevant to this conversation," she said, "which is about the photographs and what you're doing with them and what I'm telling you about what I know." He looked at her for another long moment. She looked back. She had spent 14 months developing a tolerance for the specific quality of Dev Callahan's attention when he was deciding something about her. And she had learned that the best response to it was to hold her own position without performing the holding of it, which was what she was doing now. "The photographs," he said finally. "Yes. You're telling me not to use them. I'm telling you that if you use them, I will tell Matteo Varro the source of the information that led to Friday's meeting," she said. "What you do with that information is your decision. I'm giving it to you so that you can make the decision with accurate data." He was quiet. She could see him running the calculation, which was the calculation of a lawyer who had spent years assessing the precise value of information in negotiation, and she waited for the calculation to complete, which it did in approximately 40 seconds. "All right," he said. She looked at him. "All right, as in the photographs won't be used." He said it with the specific flatness of someone who had made a decision and was not going to ornament it. as in the negotiation proceeds through other channels. She nodded. She picked up her bag. She stood. She looked at him across the desk. This man she had eaten dinner with 60 times, and argued about small things with, and known, in the specific way you knew people. You lived part of your life adjacent to. And she thought about the category he had placed her in, and the reassessment she had just watched happen. And she thought, I am not angry about the category. I am done with the conversation. I'm sorry it ended the way it did. She said, the relationship. I'm not sorry about today. He looked at her. Zara, he said, not the moderate voice. Something closer to the voice she had heard at the kitchen table. The voice he used when he forgot to choose the voice he was going to use. I didn't mean for you to be involved. I know, she said. That's the part that's the most honest thing you've said about it. She held his gaze for a moment. Take care of yourself. Dev. She went out of his office. She thanked the assistant. She took the elevator down to the lobby, and she went out into the Wednesday afternoon, and she stood on the pavement, and she breathed for a moment, and she thought, that is done. She took out her phone. She called the number. He answered on the second ring. It's handled, she said. He won't use the photographs. Pause. What did you say to him? I told him I knew what he was doing with them, she said. And I told him that if he continued to use them, I would tell you the source of the information that put you at Elliot's on Friday, which is information you don't currently have in full. Another pause, longer this time. He agreed. He agreed. She said, he's a lawyer. He knows when the cost of continuing outweighs the benefit. And the information about the source. Matteo said, that you offered to tell me. I will tell you, she said. I wasn't using it as a bluff. I was giving him accurate information about the consequences of his decision. The consequence is real. She paused, but it can wait until I'm not standing on the pavement outside his building. He was quiet for a moment. She thought she could hear him thinking, which was not something she could usually hear in people, but which she had begun to be able to hear in him. The specific quality of a silence that was doing work rather than waiting. Come back to the building on Alcott, he said, when you're ready. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said. She put the phone in her pocket. She looked at the street and the city and the Wednesday afternoon proceeding without reference to any of what had just happened. And she thought about the conversation she had just had and about what she had said at the end, which was the most honest thing she had said in the conversation and which she had not planned to say and which she was not sorry she had said. And she thought, I am not done with this situation, but I am done with that part of it. And the rest of it is the part that I did not make and am going to navigate anyway. She started walking toward Alcott. She thought about what she was going to say when she got there, and she found that for once she did not have an organized set of questions or a prepared position. She had the information she was going to give him, and after that, she was going to see what came next, which was different from how she usually approached things, and which was its own kind of information about what the situation had become. She walked. The city did what cities did. She thought about a bar on a Friday night, and a tray of 4 drinks, and a decision made in approximately 1 second that had led, by a series of steps that no one had planned and everyone had navigated, to a Wednesday afternoon and a building on Alcott and a conversation she was walking toward that she had not organized in advance. She thought, I did not plan any of this, and it is going somewhere anyway. She kept walking. He was at the desk near the window when she came in. He looked up when the elevator opened, and he did the thing she had been observing for 5 days, which was look at her face before anything else. The same way he had looked at the bar and at the empty room on Sunday, the systematic attention moving to her first, and then to what she was carrying, and then to the room around her. She stood for a moment in the elevator doorway and let this happen, and then she walked across the floor to the chair across from his desk and sat down. Dev Callahan used to work at a firm called Sterling Pryor before he moved to Harlow and Crane. She said. Sterling Pryor had a client called Varro Consolidated. He would have had access to documentation about the family's business activities for approximately 2 years before he moved firms. She paused. That's where the information about Elliot's came from. He knew about my workplace because we were together for 14 months. He knew about your connection to the bar because he had seen it in documentation from his time at Sterling Pryor. She looked at the desk between them. That's the source. He was very still. Sterling Pryor, he said. Yes. He was quiet for a long moment. He turned the pen once. She had come to understand that this was how he thought, and she let him think. Outside the window, the afternoon had moved toward early evening, and the city had the quality it had in the transition between the two, the specific amber of light that happened when the day was completing itself. Sterling Pryor lost the Varro account 8 years ago, he said, when my father died and I restructured, and Dev moved to Harlow and Crane 3 years ago, she said, which is when he would have taken whatever he had to a firm whose clients could use it. She looked at him. I don't know if he took actual documents. I don't know if it was information he had retained. I'm telling you what I was able to assemble, not what I can prove. He looked at her. How did you find this? I called Petra again, she said. She remembered something from the property transaction she'd processed 18 months ago. The Council of Record for the Mercer entity had a background note in the firm's file that listed prior employment. Sterling Pryor was on it. He held her gaze. She held his back. She was aware of the specific quality of this particular gaze, which was the full attention quality. And she had been in it enough times in the last 5 days to understand that it was not performing attention, but was simply what his attention looked like when he was directing it. And she sat in it without adjusting. Thank you, he said. She looked at the desk. I told Dev I'd tell you the source if he used the photographs, she said. I wasn't using it as a threat. I meant it. He needed accurate information to make his decision. I gave it to him. She paused. I also wanted you to have it because it was yours to have. It's about your family. He was quiet. Yes, he said. It is. She looked at the window. I have one more question, she said. He waited. Friday, she said. The man in the blue jacket. The meeting that was disrupted. She looked at him. Was it a meeting you wanted to have? He held her gaze for a moment. It was a meeting that was arranged for me, he said. The man in the blue jacket represents a group that has been attempting to consolidate their position in this city at the expense of several parties. Mine. Among them. The meeting was framed as an opportunity to negotiate. In practice, it was an assessment of whether I was someone who could be managed. He paused. My answer to that question was going to be no before I sat down. She thought about this, and when I kissed you, he said. The assessment ended. The man in the blue jacket left because the situation had become visible in a way that was no longer useful to him. The meeting was over before it had finished being a meeting. She looked at him, and you let it happen. He was quiet for a moment. I made the same decision I described when you asked me on Sunday, he said. It wasn't the wrong moment to not stop something. She sat with the sentence again, which she had been sitting with for 3 days, and she thought about it now in the context of what he had just told her, which was that the meeting was already going to end the way he wanted it to end, and that when she kissed him, the meeting ended differently, but with the same result, and that he had let it happen, not because it served the meeting, but for a reason he had expressed as a double negative. That was, she now understood, the most direct thing he knew how to say about the reason. I made a decision in approximately 1 second, she said. I didn't know anything about the situation I was deciding in. I know. And you made a decision in approximately 1 second not to stop it. Yes. Knowing what you knew. Yes. She looked at her hands in her lap. She thought about 1 second, and the specific weight of decisions made in 1 second, and the way the weight of those decisions sometimes turned out to be not the weight of the thing you thought you were deciding, but the weight of a different thing entirely. She thought about Dev's expression on Friday, which was not jealousy, which was useful calculation. And she thought about the man she had stood next to at the bar for 4 seconds, who had assessed the situation in the same 1 second she had arrived at stay. "I owe you an apology," she said. He looked at her. "I used you as a prop in my own drama without asking," she said. "I was in a bar on a Friday night doing my job, and my ex-boyfriend walked in with a woman, and I had a feeling, and I acted on the feeling, and the nearest person got kissed without being consulted about it." She looked at him. "I'm sorry. That was rude. I said it on Friday, and I'm saying it again with more information." He held her gaze. "You said it on Friday without information," he said. "You were apologizing for what you thought you'd done. What did you think you'd done?" She thought about it. "I thought I'd kissed a stranger and embarrassed myself, and possibly made the stranger uncomfortable. And now I know the stranger had his own reasons for what he did in that moment, and the situation was more complicated than I knew, and I'm still apologizing for my part of it. Which was the part where I kissed someone without asking." She looked at him. Both of those things are true at the same time. He was looking at her with the expression she had been cataloging all week, and which she had revised her understanding of several times, and which she was now, in this room, in this conversation, finally understanding precisely. Which was, this was what it looked like when Matteo Varro was interested in something, not assessing it, not managing it, but interested in it the way you were interested in things that surprised you into wanting to know more. "The honest version," he said. She looked at him. "Of what?" "Of Friday. You've given me the version you understood when it happened, and you've given me what you've found out since. I've given you the same." He paused. "What's the version that has all of it?" She thought about this. She thought about what the honest version was, which required looking at all the parts of it without the versions she had been telling herself. She said, "I turned and kissed the nearest person because I was feeling something I didn't know how to hold in that moment, and I needed to do something with it. That was the full reason. It wasn't a plan, and it wasn't a calculation, and the decision took 1 second." She looked at her hands, "And when you didn't stop it, I noticed the staying, and I noticed that you looked past me at Dev and not at me. And I thought about those two things all Friday night, and I came back for a second drink that I didn't order, because I wanted to look at you again. I didn't." She looked at him. "That's the honest version." He was very still. She waited. He said, "The honest version from my side is that when your text arrived, I had been in that bar for 40 minutes, and I had been watching a meeting fail in slow motion, and I was thinking about how to exit it cleanly. And then 43 words arrived from a wrong number and said he's following me. And the 43 words were the most direct thing anyone had said to me in that building in 40 minutes. And I replied before I thought about why I was replying." He paused. "And when you turned around, I understood I was already looking at you, because I had been looking at the direction of the text." He looked at the desk. "And then you kissed me. And I didn't stop it, because the meeting was already finished, and because—" She waited. "Because," he said, "I made the same decision you made, in 1 second, without planning it." She looked at him across the desk. The office had the amber evening light in it now, and the city was outside the window doing its evening things, and she thought about 1 second and the specific weight of it, and the way it had led, by way of a wrong number, and a man in a blue jacket, and a woman in a dress, and a conversation with a lawyer, and a building on Alcott, to this. "What do we do with that?" she said. He looked at her. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Come to dinner." She looked at him. It was the simplest thing he had said to her in 5 days. It was the only thing he had said that was not in some way about the situation. It was a sentence with nothing underneath it except what it said. "When?" she said. "Tonight. Now. If you want. There's a restaurant the family owns on the east side that's quiet on Wednesdays." He paused. "You'd be recognized there if anyone knew to look. Which they won't." She thought about this. She thought about quiet on Wednesdays and a restaurant the family owned and being recognized, which was a category of consideration she had not previously had to apply to dinner. She thought about the honest version, and 1 second, and the amber light in the room, and a man who had said, "Stay," by not moving. "All right," she said. He stood. She stood. She picked up her bag. He put on his jacket, which was on the back of his chair, and she watched him do it, and thought about Friday night in the bar when she had watched him sit with his drink and wait for the looking to subside. And she thought about how different it was to watch someone do an ordinary thing when you were doing it, as a person who had chosen to be in the room rather than a person who had ended up in it. He came around the desk. He stopped beside her, and they were standing close in the way of 2 people who were about to leave a room together, and he looked at her, and she looked at him. "The honest version," she said. "That you just gave me." He looked at her. "You said because," she said. "And then you said I made the same decision you made in 1 second without planning it. But that's not what you started to say." He was quiet. She waited. "No," he said. "It isn't." She waited. "I didn't stop it," he said, because it was the first thing in several years that arrived without a calculation attached to it. He held her gaze. "You turned around and kissed me, and you didn't know who I was, and you didn't want anything from me, and it was 43 words to a wrong number and 1 second, and nothing else." He paused. "That's what I didn't stop." She held his gaze for a long moment. She thought about no calculation, and nothing else, and a man who handled things in ways that did not generate press coverage, and who had sat in a bar on a Friday night with his drink, and waited out the looking, and had not left. "Dinner," she said. "Yes," he said. They went out. The elevator came. They went down. They went out into the Wednesday evening, which was neither Friday nor any of the days between, which was simply Wednesday, which was the day they were in, which was enough. She walked beside him, and the city was around them, and she thought I turned and kissed the nearest person to make my ex-boyfriend jealous, and the nearest person turned out to be Matteo Varro, and my ex-boyfriend's expression was not jealousy. And I spent a week finding out why. And at the end of the week, I am walking to dinner with a man who made a decision in 1 second, the same way I did. And neither of us planned it, and it is going somewhere anyway. She looked at the street. She looked at him. "For the record," she said, "it didn't work, making him jealous." He looked at her. The corners of his mouth moved in a way she had not seen before, and which was, she thought, a smile. The kind that happened because something was actually amusing, rather than because the occasion required one. "I know," he said. I was watching his face. She looked at him. She thought about 400 shares and a photograph in profile, and a crowd in a bar on a Friday night, all saying the same name. And she thought about what it said about the situation, that the thing she had done on impulse had been the most seen moment of her week, and the most important moment of her week had been in an office on Wednesday afternoon when she had said the honest version out loud for the first time. "Dinner," she said. "Yes," he said. They walked.